I'm calling core design. And let's see if this is actually gonna work. So Andy Sandham here, the beautiful Scottish guy with amazing hair. He was the writer for Tomb Raider 4 and 5 and 3. No, you were sure.
No, it was still God, I can't remember. Vicky.
Vicky
3.
Yeah, and you were a level designer for Tomb Raider 3, did London.
Yeah, that's where it all began. Yeah.
Peter Connelly did the music, barely, and sound effects for Tomb Raider 4, 5, and 6. He also done some sound effects and music for Tomb Raider 3 as well. Yes. And there is Tom Scutt. Tom, say hello.
Hello. He's down for a bit of burrito, by the sound of it.
Stop interrupting people, Peter, because we need to see Tom. Tom was AI programmer for Tomb Raider 1, 2, 3, and 4.
I was programmer for 3, 4, and 5.
3, 4, and 5. I should have done my research better. So these are the guys, and we will be playing some games. Tomb Raider 4 today with them, and with AJ actually playing the game, and we just observing. I'm reading out your questions, and you guys having a banter and a laugh and making fun of Peter's face, as always.
This almost gave me a nervous breakdown, this level, because of basically having to get Von Croy to do the tutorial where he had to stay with you throughout the entire level, which was fine if you did the normal things, but obviously all of the testers and players went out of their way to do things that would break it. If you jumped as Lara onto the space where Von Croy was, then you couldn't latch on without going through Von Croy. Or sometimes you'd fall down and then Von Croy would fall down after you, and it was, yeah.
How did you manage to make Von Croy climb geometry pretty much like Lara? It must have been a nightmare to code him, especially falling and climbing up and down.
It was a bit. So I think in the original, the first two Tomb Raiders, the enemies could climb, but one of the things that I introduced in Tomb 4 was being able to jump, because up until then the enemies couldn't jump, and that was like one of the really big things I wanted to get in from between the third and fourth game. I think because originally I was a player I loved Tomb Raider 1 and 2, I really enjoyed them, but all of the things I'd kind of wanted to see in the game when I was a player, I actually kind of got to put in when I was the AI programmer. You see, I just saw in the chat a couple of people asking about the length of levels, and that was one thing I wanted to say is just, it's crazy, really, given the limitations of the PlayStation, just how huge Tomb Raider levels were. They're much bigger than levels tend to be nowadays. And considering just how little memory there was in the PlayStation 1, it's bonkers that the levels were just so enormous.
There's a deleted level left in the game called the Valley Temple. Is there any interesting story behind this level?
No.
I'd never heard of that.
Do you feel that the difficulty curve was kind of was it a kind of nice difficulty curve through the games, because we'd never really played each other's levels, so it was kind of it was a guessing game.
Well, for me as a player, it was always difficult. It was just insanely difficult. Some of them, particularly in, like the Karnak levels, were quite. Alexandria levels, particularly, were very difficult because of the open environment. You would have like a hub, which I think was Coastal Ruins, and it was just like to figure it out was just absolutely insane.
So I think it's an interesting thing in game development, and I think we definitely saw it in Tomb Raider, was that basically you've got a team of testers and they basically become experts at the game because they're playing it every day, and you get this kind of difficulty creep in that when they early on in the game development you probably got the difficulty about right, and then the play testers get more and more expert at playing the game because they're playing it over and over and over again, and so what they see as the correct level of difficulty for a novice player is much too hard. And I think we were kind of a bit aware of that, but probably we didn't take it into account as much as we should have done, I think.
Can I ask Peter a question? So Peter, how do you start thinking about music for Egypt? Do you go and study Egyptian music, or do you just make something up?
You know, as I watched a lot of The Mummy at the time. It was mentioned earlier, and I've got the soundtrack to that, listened to that, and got a bit of inspiration from that. But generally, I just look at the background, and just eventually something just drops, and it kind of works for me, you know.
I was very concerned because it's like I'm driving as careful as I can and she's still losing health and complaints. What can I do? What am I doing wrong? This is why I never got my driver license. This game scarred me. Would you be willing to share the Tomb Raider 4 level design documents and other such development documents if you have them? That's from Jugim16.
Yeah, of course, yeah. We try and share everything with Ash that we can. I'm just moving house at the minute, so I said to Ash that I'll probably be able to dig out a few documents. Heather recently found a lot of Tomb Raider 1 documents up in her attic. I've got a presentation she did, which I can share.
I will excuse myself for a second, but you guys please carry on talking, if that's okay.
Are you going for a Waz?
Pretty much, yes. Going to ladies' room. I feel like a woman reborn. Okay.
That's what Tom was just about to say.
All right.
Yeah.
And Andy, Tom, did any of you think that back then, that in 20 years' time or 25 years' time, we'd be sitting here talking about something we did a long time ago and how it affected people? I think that's, I'm still very humbled at learning, what it's done for people and how it's been their salvation. People have done music or people doing art because of what you did. It's quite.
It is humbling, yeah. I mean, it's fantastic, and thank you all for for kind of loving it, because we loved it when we were doing it. Apart from Tomb Raider 5 and Let's Get.
Tomb Raider 5 is great! Stop hating on it! What's the original idea for the final boss with Seth? Currently he only walks and shoots, and Lara avoids him, but hidden animations show that there was something more planned. That's probably for you, Andy, because you did Cairo?
The entire concept behind that was something that I have entirely forgotten.
There is a question about All Hallows. Now, we tried to focus on Tomb Raider 4 with this stream, but I will ask anyway, because Andy, you did All Hallows. Tomb Raider, sorry if this asked before, but why was All Hallows cut down so much? Did PS1 limits determine the facts? Is there any chance a most intact version of this level still available somewhere?
All Hallows was an extra level. I remember that was torturous, and I remember making it so hard that it almost made my eyes bleed. I remember just sitting there for hours playing it myself, like in the flow state where it's difficulty versus skill, and I was just in a state of flow for about an hour just trying to do my own level, at which stage you need to ask yourself, if it's that difficult, then you shouldn't be putting it in a commercial game.
I'll be back in 2 minutes.
And I'm gonna whip this hoe.
Am I back, by the way? Can you see
You
me?
are back, but
No, I can't
for some
see you
reason
at all.
your video is not...
Are you a ghost, Tom?
I am.
Yeah, you're a ghost.
Jez used to tell me my levels were very brown. I think he might have had a point there. Why are all your levels so fucking brown?
There's a question from Hansel. What have you guys done after Tomb Raider and Core? Do you still work in the game industry? Let's start with Peter.
I've been since leaving core design. I've been dealing with the games industry, pretty much full time since then. Worked for various companies throughout. I mean, Ubisoft's big done has played a big part in a lot of the projects I've worked on in the last 10-15 years. But at the moment I'm kind of just chilling out, really taking time out. I've been self-employed for 12 years now, and I'm just kind of just take it easy, just seeing what's going, and just doing my own thing,
Right, Andy, what are you doing then?
So I went and worked at. I came back to Core, worked there with Tom for a while and Pete for a bit on Shell Shock 2 and Rogue Warrior, 2 of the worst games ever made. Without cut long story short, so I went over to Stainless Games. I was lead designer on Magic the Gathering, and then the Isle of Wight was so lovely that I moved to Holland to become a teacher I've now been teaching game design, and I'm head of game design at York St John, game design, not game art or game programming, and spent 11 years teaching game design.
Tom, what are you doing then?
So bizarrely, after Tomb Raider, I did various game companies. We set up our own company, did some things, never made any money. I worked for various games companies. I then went back to. So before I did Tomb Raider, I was a university lecturer, and I went back to doing that for a while. But now, bizarrely, I program tram simulators for training tram drivers. Don't know what.
That's a big switch.
It's good. But it's the games industry. I don't know. I still like to be in the games industry in a way, but it's just a bit. Unless you're very lucky. I mean, I think this is what we're saying really. If we were really lucky with Tomb Raider, and I think unless you're very lucky, the games industry nowadays is a lot of times it's not a lot of fun.
AJ, come on.
AJ.
Did you plan to kill Lara before the start of making Tomb Raider 4? This is from Mbong.
I can't remember that. That's an interesting one. I think. Can you remember, Tom?
I feel like we did because we didn't want to do another one, and it didn't bloody work, did it?
He got a massive bulge, one Croy.
I was just noticing.
What the hell is happening there?
I was just about to comment on that, and I didn't like to.
I didn't actually notice.
That's what he's covering up with his hat.
Like he got a huge boner of her dying. What the hell?
Well, that's what Angel of Darkness is all about. You see.